Hi, my name's Emma, and I'm a huge book nerd.
You're my library, always open for business, but you never show it. You're just sitting with it, but I know the score, and you're kidding.
It has come to my favorite time of the month, the end of the month, where I get to tell you all about the books that I read during the month, and then I get to plan the books I'm going to read next month, which will be the next video you see, so keep your eyes open for that one. So this month I read a total of 10 books. That includes 2 audiobooks, and I also started to read an 11th book, but I didn't finish it. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So with those 10 books, I read a total of 3,100 pages. Yay! I'd say that's a pretty solid number. I did count audiobooks in that page total, but I don't know if that really counts, but whatever. All right, let's just get into it because I found some really good books this month and I'm excited to tell you about them. So the first book I read this month actually was not amazing, but I'm really glad that I finally got to it, and that is Grasshopper Jungle by Andrew Smith. This is the first book I read this month, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. I thought it was okay. It was a lot of testosterone. Normally I really like reading. Normally I really enjoy male main characters. I don't know why. For some reason I tend to connect really well with male main characters. I don't know what that's about. But this one, I was just like, it was a lot. I was like, there is just a lot of testosterone here. It was just like a boy going through puberty, and I was like, I cannot deal with you anymore. So I got really sick of that in this book. So beyond that, this book was just really weird. That's the best way I can describe it if you don't know what this is about. It is about a boy and his friend who basically bring about the end of the world, death by giant praying mantises. Yeah, it was so weird. I don't know how to criticize it, because the only thing I can think of that's kind of similar to this is a musical, Little Shop of Horrors. That's also a movie. You might have seen that, but it kind of reminded me of that, but with a lot more testosterone and weirdness, and I didn't like the writing style very much. It was really choppy. And I also found the audiobook of this, and I kind of read partially actually reading it, and then when I had stuff to do, I listened to it on audiobook, and the audiobook was terrible. I really actively hated it. So I don't recommend the audiobook. If you want to read this, read the actual hard copy. So the second book that I read in September, I really loved, highly recommend. And that is Sold by Patricia McCormick, and I knew that this book was going to be hard-hitting, and man, it was. It was a very hard subject, but it actually wasn't hard to read because of the way it's written. It's actually written like a book of poetry, and I was just so enthralled by the writing style of this book that I could not put it down. I basically read this in one day because it was so good. And this isn't very long either. It's 263 pages, but the 263 pages absolutely fly by. And I was really captivated by this story. It's really sad and really painful to read sometimes. And the other thing I loved about this book was the ending. I just thought the ending was perfect. And I don't want to say any more about that, but I just thought the way it was done and where it cut off was just right. It gave me just what I needed and not too much, and I really loved everything about this, and I highly recommend you pick it up. I think it's a very important topic. Speaking of the topic, I should probably tell you what this is about. This book is about a 13-year-old girl who gets sold into sex slavery. Yeah. So that's why it's very hard to read, in the sense that it's a really tough topic. I highly recommend it. I think it's really, really well done. So the next book that I read in September was Dumplin by Julie Murphy, and I also read this partially in the physical copy and partially on audiobook, and the audiobook of this was pretty good actually, so if you want to read it on audiobook, it's pretty decent. Again, I didn't love this book. I didn't hate it either. I just am tired of reading young adult that has a really good idea that's just not executed the best that it could be. Like, I love that this is about a self-proclaimed fat girl, and I love that it's about her like entering a pageant. I think that's really cool, and I loved a lot of the idea of this book, but the writing was just meh, the plot was meh. There were a lot of important ideas addressed in this about fat shaming and the way we view especially women's bodies in our culture, but it was just kind of bleh. So I know that's kind of controversial because a lot of people love this book, but for me, it was just okay. I wish it had been better executed. I almost forgot to mention a few things that I really liked about this book. I really liked that there were drag queens portrayed in a positive light, and there's a Catholic boy in this book that's not like shamed for being Catholic. I feel like a lot of times when there is both drag queens and Catholicism, one of them is portrayed as evil or bad. And I liked that both sides had representation in this and in a positive light. So yay for that. This book also had like just a bad mom, and like in YA there's just so much like hating on parents, and that gets on my nerves sometimes because it's just like a trope that's in so many YAs, and I'm like, okay, these parents are not all horrible people. Like, I don't know, it just bothers me. But yeah, this is quite possibly my favorite book that I read this month. I'm very excited to tell you about. It's The Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling, and let me tell you, I was terrified to read this book because so many people didn't like it, and they said that like it was terrible for various reasons. Like on Goodreads, this has like an average of 3.5 stars or something like that. But this was so good. I think people don't like it because it's J.K. Rowling not writing Harry Potter, and it's not YA either. It's like very much aimed towards adults. But I loved it. I think the way she developed the characters was great. I think the story was really well executed. I loved like the themes that showed up throughout, and like it was kind of like just the structure was so well done, and it like bookends, and like I don't want to give too much away because like I feel like discovering the story yourself is part of what makes it so great. I think this book is especially good for like cozy late night reading. There was something about like the atmosphere of this book that just you could like sink into, and like it wasn't too stressful, but it was still really interesting, and I just really loved this book. I think the characters are what drove this, and I was really happy with this, and I cannot believe I put it off for so long just because I was scared of it. So if you have thought about reading The Casual Vacancy but are scared to because you're a Harry Potter fan, read it. Just know that it's not Harry Potter. Keep an open mind. So the next book that I read, I listened to completely on audiobook, and that was Say What You Will by Cami McGovern. So this story is about a girl with cerebral palsy and a boy with OCD, and how they become friends, and then possibly more than friends. And the Goodreads description compared this to The Fault in Our Stars and Eleanor and Park, which both of those I really love, so I was like, ooh, maybe I'll really love this. But I was also skeptical because I feel like so many things compare themselves to The Fault in Our Stars and Eleanor and Park, and they pale in comparison. I was actually pretty pleasantly surprised by this book. I thought it was really different subject matter from what we usually see. I really liked that it was like diverse and showing a different viewpoint, and I really liked the way it was executed for the most part. The writing was nothing like spectacular, but I enjoyed it. I really liked that the girl, Amy, who has cerebral palsy, actually helps the boy who has OCD kind of more than he helps her, because the way it's like set up, it's like he's supposed to be her helper, but then she ends up helping him more. And I liked the way that was flip-flopped, like threw off our expectations, and it didn't just like stick to like the stereotype of a disabled person. So I really, really liked that. I also thought that it was a really cool pairing of a visible disability with an invisible one, and it like played off of like how people view them and how they are like handicapped by the way people see them in the world, even more so than they're handicapped by their actual disability. So there were a lot of cool ideas addressed here. But one thing I didn't like about this is, yet again, we have the YA trope of a horrible mother. It's just, she's portrayed as so evil and so one-dimensional, and I'm like, there is so much more to this mom than just that. So I don't know, that really ticked me off, and I was like, I want parents to be portrayed in a good light sometimes. Like, they're not always bad. Even as a teenager, if you think that your parents are awful, I promise you, they're probably not. Some cases they are, and I'm very sorry for you, but it's not always the case. And like the angsty teen thing, I'm like, your parents aren't that bad. Calm down, they're trying to help you. Another audiobook that I listened to this month was Forgive Me, Leonard Peacock. And that book is about a boy who is planning on committing suicide at the end of the day. And you follow him through his whole day. This book was really interesting, I think, especially to listen to an audiobook because it's from his perspective. So you're like listening to him talk about why he's gonna commit suicide, and it's so sad and like hard to listen to. And I also think of all of the books I've read dealing with like depression and suicide so far, I think this one handled it the best. I can't talk about that a lot without giving away spoilers, but I'd be really interested to talk to someone who's read it about like what you think about the way it handles suicide. But I think it did a really good job, and just like compared to things like 13 Reasons Why and All the Bright Places, I think this definitely did not glorify suicide, and it focused on like how the mental illness of depression can make you feel like suicide's the only answer, but to other people outside, it's clear that like there is more, and that this depressed person needs help to get out of the situation that they're in. And I thought it was very well done. But yet again, here's the downside. There is another horrible mother in this book. What is it with horrible moms in YA? I can't. And I was a little more okay with the horrible mom in this one because the whole book is from his perspective, so it makes more sense that he would see his mom this way. But I was like, come on, let's get some nice parents for once. So if you know a YA book that has nice parents, comment it down below because I'm really tired of these awful parents in YA. All right, let's get out of the YA zone. Another really good book and surprising book that I read this month was Euphoria by Lily King. This has been on my reading list for a long time, and I literally put it on my reading list because it reminded me of a song in a musical. And like, literally I didn't even read the synopsis. I was like, ooh, Euphoria, and I added it. Stupid reason, really stupid reason, but I'm really glad that I added this because I really liked this book. I thought the writing was phenomenal. It was so intelligent and so beautiful, and the way this was structured, I was just like, oh my gosh. And there were so many, like, you can see I like put a lot of my tabs. If you want to know what my tabs mean, there's a video for that. You can go watch it. I'll link it down below for you. There were a lot of like quotes that I marked, a lot of plot points. I cried at the end. I just think there were so many moments in this where I was like, that was like the most beautiful, eloquent, intelligent little mini essay, and I was like, wow. So Euphoria is about these anthropologists studying societies in New Guinea, and it's really interesting because it addresses these issues of like widening your perspective and learning that not all people are like you, and that's not necessarily bad. And I really like that, and just the way this was so eloquently addressed those issues that I just wanted to like hand this to closed-minded people and be like, listen, read these amazing words because I cannot say these things to you as eloquently. It was just really, really well done, and there's some beautiful imagery in this, like metaphors and like things that keep showing up, and I don't want to say too much about it because this is the kind of book that it's really powerful to discover everything as you go, and you're just kind of like, things dawn on you, and it's really great. And there's a really interesting love triangle in this. I'm not usually a fan of love triangles, but I thought this was really interestingly done. I really highly recommend this, especially if you like intelligent, eloquent, elegant writing. That was a lot of E words. I'm very sorry. It's really good. Pick it up. All right, and then the next book I read this month, I read because I got my capsule books box in the mail, which is hanging out on my shelf right back there because it's really pretty. And I decided to read the shortest one first because I just really wanted to read one in this month. And this is also the one that the synopsis intrigued me the most. And that is The Briefcase. I am not even gonna try to pronounce this name. I'm very sorry. But look at this cover, it's beautiful, just saying. So this is about a young woman, Tsukiko. I think I pronounced that right, not sure. It's about how she develops this relationship with her old teacher, who she only calls him sensei, which means teacher. She doesn't call him by his name. And it's just this really slow burning book about like their entire like friendship, and then how like it blooms into more. And I just really loved the way that it took me like 40 pages to get into the writing style, but once I was into the writing style, I just wanted to sit down and like read this because it was calming and just like relaxing, and I feel like this would be something you would read in a spa. I don't know why, it doesn't really make sense, but this was really cool, and I didn't quite get to tears by the end, but I was close. If you're interested in buying a book capsule, they ship on the 1st and 15th of every month, and you can use my discount code EmmasBooks15 to get 15% off your order. So I'll leave their link and my coupon code down in the description so that you can use that if you want to read this book and others in that box. Then I ordered some books from Thrift Books, and they came this month, and I found a picture book from my childhood that I just like really wanted to have. I don't know what it was. There's something about this book where I just needed to own it. I found it on Thrift Books for like not very much, so I went ahead and ordered it, and I read it when it came in. And I don't know if it really counts because it's only like 45 pages and it's a picture book, but I did want to share it with you anyway. And that's Tear Soup, a recipe for healing after loss. And my brother died when I was really young, and I think my parents bought this book to like help me and themselves like deal with that. And it's just really, really beautiful, and there's something about, I just really enjoy the illustrations. I think it's just a really great book, especially for someone who's grieving. There's just something about it that's really cathartic for me anyways, because this is from my childhood. But I recommend this if you have like a kid that is having to deal with the loss of a loved one. I think this can be like a cool way to sort of explain that like grieving's okay, and that it takes a while and it's different for everyone, and it's a necessary process. So yeah, check this out if you need it. It's your time to make some tear soup. So now I'm gonna mention that book that I started but didn't finish. That's Everything Leads to You by Nina LaCour. And I think I'm just maybe too old for this now. I feel like I would have really loved this in high school, and like it makes me sad because this cover is so pretty and cute, but I got like a chapter into this and I was like, I do not care about these characters at all. And there was something about it being set in like Hollywood where I was like, this is just so far removed from me and my high school experience that I'm not invested and I don't care. So I was just like at a point where I was like, there are so many books that I really want to read that I'm not gonna make myself push through this one. So if you strongly object to me putting this down and you think that it's a book that I should read and that there's something great that happens that I need to know about, let me know in the comments, and I'm willing to give it a second chance. But for now, I'm just gonna return it to the library. And the last book that I have not quite finished yet, but it's not technically the end of the month when I'm filming this video, so I'm gonna finish it. It's Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, and I was a little bit scared to read this because I told people on Bookstagram that I was picking it up, and a couple people were like, oh, I didn't really like Sense and Sensibility that much, even though I loved the movie. And like, I love the movie, and which is why I really wanted to read this right now. And also I'm working on a play adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, so I was like, I need some Jane Austen in my reading life. So I picked this up and I was really scared that I wasn't gonna like it because this is Jane Austen's first book that she published. And I am absolutely loving this. I'm about 100 pages from the end right now, but like I know what happens. So I really, really love this. I love Eleanor. I think she's one of my favorite characters. I mean, I think Elizabeth in Pride and Prejudice is like the best, maybe. I don't know. I haven't read Emma yet either, which I do need to read, but I might like her better. But Eleanor is just really great. I really love Eleanor, and Colonel Brandon is like, he has my heart. I love him. And it's so sad that, like, whatever. You know the story, you know what I mean. It's just sad. And he just warms my heart, and I think he's like the best human, and I would marry him. I definitely am loving this. I cannot wait to finish the last 100 pages. I just want to go sit down and read this right now, but I have things to do, so probably not gonna happen. If you haven't read Sense and Sensibility and you like Jane Austen, you're in a place where you can read Jane Austen and enjoy it. I know it's like tricky if you're not used to it, but I highly recommend it. I think it's really good. Those are all of the books that I read in September, and I think it was a pretty good reading month. I had a lot of great reads, my favorite being The Casual Vacancy, Euphoria, and Sense and Sensibility. Those would be the top 3, but Sold was really good too. Oh man, it's been such a good reading month. Dang. But yeah, I'm probably gonna go plan out what I will be reading in October so that I can make that video for you guys. I cannot wait to hear what you guys all read this month, so let me know down below in the comments. And if you have any recommendations based on the books I read and loved this month, I would love to hear those too. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Please like and subscribe and leave comments down below, and I will see you again soon. Bye! My kitty cat wants in. Just a second. And oh my god, the cat wants out again. Okay. You're so needy!